it is great to see you all. Just to give you a bit of context, this is one of a few events that we're running as part of the Starting Line series, which is our very exciting new initiative that helps students and alumni all over the world connect with fellow alumni, learn more about new and developed or established and kind of or emerging even ecosystems across the globe as they decide where, when, how to start up their businesses. We are super excited about this one. Lars has just told us that the logo, the LSE Generate logo, is actually the colours of the flag. So we tried to tell him that it was definitely purposeful, but I think he might have seen through us. But having said that, we are really pumped to be able to find out a little bit more about the Brazilian ecosystem, especially here within São Paulo. I say here, I'm in a shed in London, but over there, when I was doing a bit of stalking actually around the internet about the ecosystem, and we'll hear more about it from these two, but it was so exciting, and I know that I think just a couple of years back, they ranked third after the US and China as the country in the world with the most tech startups that had reached unicorn status. So lots happening, and it's not a new ecosystem as well by the sounds of it. So we're really looking forward to hearing more from these guys now about what you might expect if you either joined a startup or even just thought about creating one for yourselves. So what I would say is that the boys have got some slides to share, and I'm going to let them do that now. But as with all of these events, it's super interactive. We want it to be as helpful as possible for you guys as you work out the next few steps over the next few years on your kind of hopeful entrepreneurial career journey. So please do shout out, put up that weird kind of hand thing that doesn't really look like a hand, and put any questions in the chat. And we'd really look forward to answering them as we go through the next few minutes. I'm going to hand over to Danilo and Lars, who, by the way, are competition winners from Generate. So an extra clap for them. And I wonder, you guys, if you can just introduce yourselves, your very exciting startup. They are bang in the middle of scaling this business, and they just mentioned they've just come out of a pitching event. So they're in the middle of it. So we'll hopefully be able to contribute with some kind of real life examples of what it's like for them. But do get involved. Really nice to have you, and we look forward to the start of a really exciting adventure of working with these guys. Over to you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, LJ. Yeah, thanks everyone for who are here. We are, like LJ mentioned, we are based in São Paulo, Brazil. We were both born in Brazil. I do have a Scandinavian sounding name because my great-grandfather came from Sweden to Brazil. And I would like to start by saying that this is like something very common here in the region, is you have someone from your family that came back generations ago, and they were like real entrepreneurs, right? So my great-grandfather started his own business, and my grandfather followed his footsteps, and they were also business owners. So this is something that has a lot to do with the current ecosystem and the current culture in Brazil. All the immigrants that came, and also the Brazilians that have always tried to make their own situation and the country's situations better through entrepreneurship, right? So for me, before starting our business, we'll talk about it a little bit later, I was working as the local manager for international companies, right? So I was the Latin American manager most recently for a large education technology company, the largest one, by the way. It's called Instructure. They were the New York Stock Exchange. And my role was to actually start the whole business in the region from scratch, right? So I joke about it, saying it's like entrepreneurship, but with a safety net, because there's always a big corporation helping you out. But you really have to go through all the hurdles that entrepreneurs face, right? So setting up the local entity, hiring people, getting marketing out, and one additional interesting topic, which is translating the local culture and the local rules to foreigners, which is kind of what we're going to do here in some way, right? Explain because Brazil has some very unique cultural and business issues here. So it feels like there's something that is really common in our region. So that's a little bit of my story. I'll let Danilo talk about him. Then we talk about our startup a little bit. So Danilo, to you.
Hi, everyone. I have been working with education for the past 5 years. 5 years ago, I founded the first low-cost chain of schools here in Brazil. It was a very successful project and went to a very growth story. I made an exit of this company about 1.5 years ago. Was lucky. Was just right before the pandemic, the coronavirus, and after this first journey, I felt the pain myself as a former school owner, not having access to capital here in Latin America. All our schools don't have access to financial products, capital, or any kind of credit line. Uh, not even been talking about transaction payments and all that kind of stuff. So we decided to create Educbank to be the first K-12 fintech in Latin America. We are so excited about that, and we are seeing a blue ocean of opportunity. It's one of the main sectors of our economy. It's unbelievable to think that before this, it didn't has any. We didn't count with any fintech for the sector. So we are seeing a blue ocean of opportunities, and at the same time, a huge opportunity to make the difference from a social point of view, which is one of our main goal.
Yeah. So um, our idea is to provide through software, right, a platform. So we're building this the Educbank, which is the whole financial hub, and so we will have products for mostly for the management, for the school owners. So we're a B2B business, and we'll be happy to share more of our strategy. And it's we started over a year ago. Danilo was actually a customer of mine when I was working with education technology. So it was an interesting way it all started. And we started this journey together. We already have some customers. We already have for the first rounds of funding. So we're building and hiring. So it's been really busy, but really, really fun, as it should be, right? So today, I think we're gonna talk about entrepreneurs in the region, and I have some slides here to share about the overall, let's say, environment in the market and the opportunity. And we feel free to talk about more about our company or about the entrepreneurship in general. But we're super excited with both, right? With our startup and also with what's ahead for Brazil and Latin America in the next decade, which we believe will be an amazing one, full of opportunities. So moving over here, let me get my slides here. Let's talk about the whole Latin market, right? Brazil is usually together with Mexico, the preferred place for establishing your Latin American presence, when you're trying to build something in the region. And it's an impressive region, right? So first of all, here on the left side, we have the total GDP. So we have almost $5 trillion GDP combined. We have 500 million people living in the region overall, and 330 million of them are connected to the internet. We actually have a very, very high level of, let's say, digital adoption, most than many countries. Brazil specifically is usually number 2, number 3 among like the major social networks: Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok. It's always a place of very, very large growth and adoption, which is great for entrepreneurs to actually leverage this, and build products that for which customers are already used to, like dealing with apps or dealing with any kind of digital product. So in terms of the digital market, it's really good to have so many connected people, right? And on the bottom left side, you'll see that we have also one of the most unequal countries and regions in the world, right? So Brazil has specific, very serious problems of inequality. And we see this in some ways as an opportunity for social entrepreneurs like us, right? So we believe that one of the ways out of this situation is through education. So we truly see lots of people trying to work on ways to alleviate this and try to improve the situation over the years. Right? There's huge income gap. There's huge problems of access to all kinds of basic services. And we think that entrepreneurship and also technology will be a big part of the solution. Of course, there are several other issues we could go through. But focusing on entrepreneurs, we believe this to be a motor of a powerful change driver here. And one of the interesting things for entrepreneurs right now is that VCs from all over the world are flocking to Brazil. Like they see into the whole region, the region in general. You can see all the major countries seeing huge increases in funding. So what we see is that there is available money for that, something that was not available for a long time. Entrepreneurs had to bootstrap their companies, but now there are investors who are looking at, especially at scale-ups, right? Especially at digital companies that can scale quickly. There is a lot more money available for that. Of course, the global liquidity and the low interest rates are a consequence, but they are also seeing that one of the paradoxes of Brazil is that high inequality and high barriers of entry are also generating great opportunities, because you don't really see the same competitors and the same players from other places here, either because it's too hard or because they couldn't really figure out how to get in, or because it's expensive or it's not a priority. So what we're seeing is that lots of young entrepreneurs creating new businesses, having access to capital, scaling, and building very, very nice companies here. So for example, these are some of the latest unicorns. So 10 years ago, there were no unicorns in Latin America, in Brazil specifically. And now we have several of them, and the most important ones are listed here. And if you look at some of the names here, like for example, the number one here on the right-hand side, Stone, is now a publicly traded company in the US. They started 10 years ago with just a small company here. The same with Arco, also here. So several of these companies have started locally with a local team and have grown to become global powerhouses worth several $billion in some cases. So it's just not over $1 billion, right? So we see companies that are expanding and growing globally and becoming really, really large companies. And it's something that Brazil especially used to be known for large corporations related to commodities, right? And the food industry, the agri industry. But now we're seeing people starting brand new companies and disrupting some industries like banking, like retail, like education. So it's very, very nice to see this happening. It's brand new. Here, I'm sorry, it's in Portuguese. I couldn't find the same one in English, but what it's showing is the entrepreneurship rates, right? So based on new companies, new ventures being built specifically in Brazil over the last 20 years. So we see overall a trend in growth, and more people are establishing, opening up businesses. And this is something really good to see, because even though we do have an entrepreneur, we have a culture of entrepreneurship that is very much ingrained, but I think at this point, people are actively looking for creating new companies instead of having to resort to this if they couldn't find a formal job, right? So it used to be something that you did if you couldn't really find a work. So you started selling something on the street, or you started doing something on your own. But now we see this as a real opportunity for people to make a difference and build businesses, and they understand that there is a real chance of making an impact and also having a better future for them. And finally, this is my final slide here, so we can chat afterwards about this. But what we see here is the conditions. Okay, so we're looking at 2020 around different around these topics, which are important frameworks for entrepreneurship, right? So you can see that we don't score high in almost any of these. So well, I would highlight here on the right hand side the entrepreneurial education at school stage, which we don't see at all. So kids are really not taught how to think how a business should be run, or how to open a business, how to start a lemonade stand or anything like this. We don't see happening. And we also don't see much support from the government, right? So policies or taxes, or so it's very, there's lots of red tape, and it's been improving significantly, but it's still very, very difficult. On the left hand, you can see the internal market dynamics, which are really positive. So we see the market being growing, the commercial and legal infrastructure is improving, but there's lots to improve here. There's lots of opportunities to improve, and we see that Brazilians now are not waiting for the government or for someone to save them, right? So I think we're several associations, organizations in Brazil. One of them would be Endeavor, which is a really well-known one, and they are helping improve the situation with all of these different hurdles, right? So they're trying to make something, to do something about this, and help fellow entrepreneurs to also start and grow and be successful. So this is what I had to share on the ecosystem, and we can now talk a little bit about our experience. I mean, Danilo, like he mentioned, he's a serial entrepreneur, right? Since his 20s, he's been doing this, and I think he has a lot of experience in with all these challenges that I mentioned here. But we can talk about the system, the ecosystem, or our own venture right now, is whatever you prefer.
Thank you so much, both. They were really clear and very interesting slides. All Kwame, straight in there, brilliant. There is a need globally for your product, particularly in emerging and frontier markets. Are you considering international expansion? And if yes, in what regions or countries? And maybe, and maybe while and maybe while I'm asking that question as well, if people are considering international expansion into Brazil, can you give us an idea of kind of what are the best steps to make, especially if you're quite early stage?
That's a great point, and thanks for the question. I think, let me start by saying that in the past, Brazilian entrepreneurs considered Brazil to be such a large market that they were not thinking about expanding, right? So they thought that Brazil alone was enough for their market, for their product to become big. And this has changed dramatically, and we see the new generation of entrepreneurs thinking globally for the first time, right? And I saw your event with the Tel Aviv and the Dubai chapters, and we see that some of these ecosystems, the companies are built with a global mindset, which is amazing. And we see this finally happening here in Brazil. We didn't even think about Latin America, to be honest, because if you think about it, Brazil speaks Portuguese and the other countries speak Spanish. So there was some localization to be made, starting with the language. So what we see now is that all these unicorns we're showing, they are, from day one, they're thinking about going global. And for us, yes, and also from day one, we've been thinking about how our platform, our product could expand and could be seen in other countries. Of course, that there's a specific challenge around how education is provided in each of the regions in the world, right? So, for example, right now, we are mostly talking to private schools. We're not engaging with public schools at all. But one of the things we have done since the beginning is that we have partnered with Brazil's largest K-12 education group, and they are a global company. So they have the Maple Bear franchise around the world. So they have seen the opportunity to, at some point, replicate what we have here to their global franchise. So this type of partnership will certainly help us. And as we've been talking to entrepreneurs around the world, some of them mention specific countries where this scenario is very similar to ours. So yes, we're thinking about Latin America, we're thinking about Asia. We also think about countries like the UK and the US, even though what we see there is that public schools are probably, let's say, the most popular ones, and it's the most of the some of these countries that actually only have free public schools, right? So it's a different scenario. So we're thinking about countries where for the first countries that we would go probably wouldn't need too much change to our strategy and our product, and from there we could think about adapting to different scenarios and situations. That's my view, and Danilo, feel free to add if you want to add anything.
Yes, like there's no financial product for K to 12 all around the globe. So there's a huge pain, which we are proving that our client it's willing to pay for that, and it's not just about Brazil. It's everywhere, and it's all about the quality of the education in the end of the day, because without financial product, the school owner, since you don't have access to credit to leverage your working capital, because of that, on the back of that, you need to spend at least half of your agenda of your time leading and managing the delinquency, the lack of working capital. So instead of being focused on education, uh, which is essential, um, instead of that you spend at least half of your time managing the lack of that. So it's a huge problem, not only from a financial point of view, but mainly as a social one.
Thank you so much. I can see the questions coming in. So Camilla, do you want to ask your question? Go for it.
Yes, absolutely. Olá, tudo bom?
Oh, Camila, fala português, que bom.
Sim, falo. Eu vivia no Brasil antigamente.
Muito bom. Great.
Eu te conheci.
Prazer meu. So what I wanted to ask you, you guys, is have you thought about expanding to the Lusophone world? That would sort of, obviously, if you're focusing on the private sector, that you would have to take a different stand there. But the Lusophone world, that would at least sort of get you over the linguistical barrier. I know that many times in Portugal, for example, companies, they will focus on the Lusophone world.
Yes, that's a good point, Camila. We really haven't done this sort of, let's say, study yet to see which of these countries that speak Portuguese would be good fits for us. To be honest, we're building the whole product is really software based, so it's really not that hard to translate. I think there's be more of a challenge in terms of having adapting to the local culture, right? So as you probably know, Brazil and Portugal, for example, even though they speak the same language, they are very much different in
very different.
Very different, yeah, in several ways.
Fato achei.
So you probably know that. So the language itself is a great way to start expanding, and I appreciate your idea and your thought. But possibly we would be thinking about if a product market fit first, and then second, this could be a very interesting point. So yeah, good.
Thanks, Camilla, and great language skills there. Laura, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, I was just wondering what your top tips for somebody starting their business in Sao Paulo would be. If you could give us 3, please.
I have
we have 17. Let's start with, let's see if the top 3 will be the same. So go ahead.
Let me take some notes. But like in Brazil, I think it's not different in anywhere, but especially in Brazil, it's all about the team, the people. Because here in Brazil, you don't have access to solution. There is nothing ready. So the local connection, the local expertise, the resilience, and the kind of things that if you want to make a successful company in Brazil from scratch, like from 0 to 1, the things that you will be you will need to be willing to not give up. It's all about the team, and especially in Brazil, I think that's a true story.
Yeah, I think that one of the most important, also something that applies anywhere else, but I think Brazil a lot, is if you're not from Brazil and you're thinking about starting something, it's very important to do a good homework in terms of all the necessary steps on the legal side of things, because this is a country that is trying to improve the regulation side of things, but you really need to adhere to several rules. And if you do, it will be amazing. You have a differentiator when you're, for example, you're raising money or you're trying to expand, because it's very hard to raise money when you don't really have a local balance sheet, your taxes are fine, everything is in place, because it's considered very risky to invest in a business that has not gone through all these processes. So I would say as soon as possible, try to have someone who has an understanding of these points, so you're not too late in terms of trying to correct problems you had in the beginning, right? So it's very important to start from the very beginning with the end in mind, right? So you want to have an investor, you want to sell a bit, you want to expand, but be really careful about how you start, because this could have an impact on your future, and it could be much more time consuming and expensive to correct your route instead of doing it right from the start. So basically, do your homework as it will be needed here.
That's really interesting. Thank you.
Sure. We're missing a third tip, Danilo. What else would you say?
I would say like most of one here, I think maybe have read The Tipping Point of Mark Lewell, and that strategy of word of mouth here in Brazil, it's a very strong sales channel. So if you are thinking about being a very distribution channel and strong sales orientation for the company to care about your top line, you gotta pay attention about what your client are feeling, are saying, especially to each other about your product or service. So monitoring your NPS, monitoring the satisfaction index about your client, caring about the reputation, not only about the company, but especially about the management behind the company. So these kind of things in Brazil still are very, very important. And without that, even a great plan with a lot of access to capital may crash.
That's a great point. And I would add, to this point, just saying that it has a lot to do with the culture here. I think we're probably well known for being really warm and welcoming and like friendly, right? And sometimes this could be taken to an extreme, which is not as good, because what happens when you do business in Brazil is that people want to feel like they like you and they know you and they are becoming friends, So it's really the word of mouth, like trusting your friends and your business partner. It's really mixed up a lot. So sometimes we also wish people were a little bit more professional, let's say, in the way they do things here, but it still has a lot to do with personal relationships, with word of mouth, and with the trust you're building. And this is a very important point that Danilo made. So take really good care of how you're being perceived and how you're doing this. So so that this can grow at a point where everyone is talking good things about you, right? So we are especially careful with this, with the school owners in our case, which are the industry we're in, and they are very, very hard to, let's say, break the barriers and get to them, right? So if a fellow school owner will say good things about us, this will be for them more important than having great press coverage or having great numbers or how much money we raised. They don't really, or even the product itself, they will like take, of course they'll take a look, but they will certainly trust their friend dash fellow school owner first and foremost. So it's really about building this from scratch, and it's a challenge, but it's also fun. So
that's so helpful. It's so good to get a kind of an insight as into the kind of business etiquette, because that is something if someone had just arrived, they just wouldn't have a clue, and it could land them in some hot water. There was a question from Kwame just earlier, thanks Kwame, around the fact he used to work for a Brazilian company and they focused on South-South collaborations. Is that a possible strategy you would use as well? What are your thoughts there? And Jonathan, if you've got a question as well, feel free to jump in too.
It's a good point. We haven't really talked about South-South, but yeah, it could be a way to go. Several companies go this way, and this is a very good idea. But it's something we have not put it on paper yet on how we're going to go after it. But it's a good idea. It's a good way to go. Yeah.
And I would like to make a question. What are you seeing about Brazil? Like, have that changed in the past few years?
Well, no. Well, I mean, from my personal experience, Brazil has. Well, I used to work for a company. I used to work for a Brazilian company in West Africa, but they had like a competitive advantage where people weren't necessarily nervous when they actually walk through when they walk through the door. If you have a global power, like, not a global power, but if you have more of a northern country, like a Western country like the US or some country in Europe, people tend to be a little intimidated when they walk through the door. But when a Brazilian company come in, they understand that, Brazil is a very big economy, and they have like, they have, professional companies and all, but it's not the same fear. They're a little bit more humble. They kind of befriend Brazilians a lot more. And I think the personality of Brazilians particularly is very good for like, different environments that they actually go into, so.
That's an interesting question from Thales.
I'll read it out for those that on the chat. But how do you expect the new legal framework for startups, which is waiting for presidential approval, to impact Brazil's entrepreneurial environment and for a national investment in innovative business?
Yeah, that's a great question. We were very excited and enthusiastic about that. I personally know one of the authors of this project, but being honest, it's not something that will make the whole difference as we thought until recently. Brazilian Congress are still very not business oriented, so we started to amend the project and to adjust it in a such way that currently, if you take a look on the project right now, you will have doubts if that really have the objective to unlock entrepreneurship here in Brazil. But like anything, it's better than nothing. It's baby steps. We are on a baby baby steps mode. It's how things unfortunately works in Brazil, but at the same time, we are optimistic on the long run because there's a new generation of entrepreneurs, as Lars were told, that think globally and it's willing to go global. So I think when this generation in a couple of years will start to be more mature and will start to make exits, and on the back of that we'll have more bargaining power and leverage to pressure and to advocate on a more global, like nationwide scale. I think that maybe we'll have a chance, but right now it's not easy. And one specifically thing that it's very influential here in Brazil is that our generation of entrepreneur don't like politics. Here in Brazil, politics, it's a gray area, and it's a shadow market that all the great brains of the country are in the financial market, are starting a company, and are running through a different side of that. So this is something that we need to change. We need to encourage great talents and great entrepreneurs of dedicate your lives to the public service, because if not, we will still have this problem in a decade from now.
Thanks so much for responding to that, Danilo. That was fantastic. I hope that answers your question, Teles. Now, I know that we're just coming up to the end of our session, but are there any final questions or thoughts or points that any of you want to make based on the conversation so far?
Well, yeah, I don't know if there are any questions, but I just want to, as a final thought from my side, and just adding to what Danilo said, I think in Brazil, entrepreneurs are successful not because of the government, but in spite of the government, right? So it's really a real obstacle to be overcome, is all the red tape, the high taxes, and the challenges we face. And at the same time, this is what makes also the opportunity so amazing, right? So like I said, I think the ones that are brave enough to face this and to go after it, and they see so many opportunities for entrepreneurship here. This is such a rich, such an interesting market, so much diversity, so many people who are really, I mean, right now adopting new products, new technologies, and we believe it will be has all the conditions of being one of the powerhouses of the next decade if we do things right. And we believe, like Danilo said, that the talent and the people here who are going to make a difference, they're the more they get involved, the better it will be. So that's why we think it's really ripe for big change. So we hope we are part of this change ourselves, and we make this happen. And education is one of the most important points. So
yeah, no, and it's, I mean, that entrepreneurial spirit really does shine through just through all your answers and the kind of the comments that you're making. It's really, really exciting. I think, Tiago, if you have any final questions, I know we're just coming to the end now, but I know you haven't had a chance. So if there's anything you wanted to comment on or ask, then feel free to jump into the chat just as we wind up. But I just wanted to, well, first of all, say thank you so much to Danilo and Lars for preparing the slides and just answering these questions so thoroughly and well. This, as I said at the beginning, is very much just the beginning. We are planning to do a whole host of different events and roll out a number of initiatives with Educbank. And what we need, I mean, just listening to that, I think part of the problem is that it's just so vast, the ecosystem, in terms of what we could do. So we really would love your input. We want this to be entirely student and alumni led, because if it doesn't work for you, there's no point in running it at all. So we'd love to hear of any ideas, any thoughts, any contacts, anything that you reckon would make an entrepreneurial hub over in Brazil a real success, because that's exactly what we wanted to be doing. So I think Laura will be sending out kind of forms if she hasn't already. If you haven't got them, just let us know. And we'd love to have your input on that and kind of really have a collaborative approach to this building of the ecosystem. It's not a common approach in universities, especially UK universities, and so we feel that we're being quite innovative in our own approach, and that's hopefully going to help kind of drive innovation and social innovation specifically over in that area. We'd love to see how we can input there. But thank you so much again, you guys. Laura, thank you so much for organising this as well. We will be in touch. Thank you. We'll be in touch very soon with our next adventure over in São Paulo. And yeah, do stay in touch and keep us updated with anything that's going down in your startup town. So gosh, that was a bit of a cheesy ending, wasn't it? I think we'll leave it to that. But thank you so much, guys. I know if you are in Brazil, it's your lunch. So how do you say bon appetito in Portuguese?
Yeah, you almost did it. Bon apetite.
That, exactly. Obrigada.
Obrigado.
Okay.
LJ and Laura, thank you so much, and congratulations on the amazing job you are doing promoting innovation and entrepreneurship everywhere.
Thank you, and congratulations on your achievements so far, and well done again for winning that competition. And we shall see you all soon. Thank you so much, everyone. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.